Okay, well, welcome to episode 5 of I Was a Teenage Fundamentalist. This episode we have entitled The Power of Christ Compels You. Do you know where that line comes from, Steve?
Well, I didn't, to be quite honest, but you did tell me it comes from The Exorcist.
Yes, so that's when the demon is being cast out, or attempting to be cast out of, I think her name was Regan. I think it was Regan. Trying to cast it out of her, and the priest is, going, the power of Christ compels you, the power of Christ compels you. So this one's going to be all about demons and exorcisms and the devil and all that.
I had a slight shudder when you mentioned The Exorcist, because to date, that is possibly the scariest movie I've ever seen in my life.
Yep.
And I've watched a lot of horror movies, and that one, God, it terrified me.
Yeah, same.
And I don't think I could actually sit down and watch it again.
Yeah. Well, I know we didn't talk about this in when we were planning this show, but actually, I think this is where my terror and my fear and my obsession with things demonic actually started. I think it was with The Exorcist, because my parents went out for dinner.
Yep.
One night, and you're not allowed to watch The Exorcist on television, and you're not allowed to watch The Exorcist. So what did I do?
Yeah, of
watched
course.
it. Seriously, man, traumatized me.
Yeah.
For about 3 months. I was 11, no, not even 11. I was like 10, and I did not sleep in my own room. I was like, my bed shaking, which is how it starts for her. My bed shaking, and I was sleeping on the floor of my brother's room, and this is in true 11-year-old, 10-year-old fashion, as if that's going to stop the devil.
Yeah.
From possessing me, right, to lie on my brother's floor.
It does. It stops it. It's proven.
It's the doona as well.
Yeah.
Pulling the doona up also protects you from bad things.
Just terrifying. Linda Blair. Did you ever see the sequel?
I did, yes.
Yeah, it was shit.
Yeah.
Less terrifying.
Yeah.
Anyway, we digress.
Well, no, we don't, because this is exactly what we're talking about. And I think, one of the things that we've made the point again and again is that we get primed by these things, right? And I think that was genuine. And I think also, using the word now primal instead of primed, there is something primal in our culture, and maybe even us as human beings, about the idea of being possessed and being controlled by the supernatural and all that kind of stuff. So I think I think that's actually a good segue into you telling your story first.
Oh, well, there was just, it's an interesting one. Like with the whole demons, I just found that it was fascinating. And as you say, probably primed for it. But coming into the church, there was a lot of talk about demons and a lot of, I guess, inferring that a lot of the issues that we might be facing were controlled by demons, and that they would then become part of us, or, would
latch onto us,
and possess us, I guess, in some sort of way, causing us.
But that was very different from the idea of possession, like the Linda Blair style possession, right? Because that was like they would attach to us and they would influence us, not so much hardcore control us, whereas the idea of full possession, sort of, Linda Blair exorcist stuff, was more intense. But there was some of that as well went on in our...
Oh, there absolutely was.
Our church time.
And I think, one thing that always... And I never went along to this, but there was a guy that used to run a weekly thing at this big church we're involved with.
Great big AOG.
And it was essentially, from what I understand, it was like casting out demons from people. People would go along to get the demons exorcised, and that's what the nights were about.
Can I just say, he used to get everybody singing a few songs.
Okay.
And then you'd get to the last song, which was oftentimes, I think it was a hymn, and he would actually stroll through the audience while they were singing. Everyone was singing that last song, and he'd go and shake people's hands like he was like some sort of, I don't know, superstar / granddad. And he would walk through the crowd and shake everybody's hands and all that kind of stuff. It was really odd.
Yeah.
Really odd. And then, of course, later, he would then start casting demons out of people. But it was really weird. It was like he had this ritual. He would walk up and shake everybody's hands and sort of march through and look at everyone. And he was proud of his little weekly exorcism sessions.
So I'm gathering from that you went.
I did, yeah.
Did you?
I went a few times, yeah.
Ah,
yeah, Power of Christ compelled me.
That's interesting because I couldn't bring myself to it. I thought that most of that stuff was just an absolute crock, and it was ridiculous. You'd hear things like, well, one that stands out was there was a bunch of people that used to meet at their home every week, and that was very much about casting demons out of everything. And in an effort to try and get myself and another friend along to that one week, they were telling us how they were on their way somewhere and a demon was under their brake pedal and another one was on top of their accelerator. And it was preventing them from stopping the car and causing them to speed, which I would love.
Did the devil give them a ticket, do you know? Or?
Well, I think the devil did give them a ticket,
Right.
and I'm not quite sure whether they tried to convince the copper of the police officer of that, but if they did, I would love to have been there. That would have been amazing. But, there was that sort of thing happening around me, but I was never really part of it. However, there was one stage where I thought, even though it's a load of rubbish, that surely there's something happening. There's enough people doing it. And I remember contacting you, T, and said, there was a famous witch who used to do clairvoyancy around us in the city we lived, and a lot of people used to go to her and go and seek her wisdom and her power and her connection to the spiritual life. And we thought that they were just seeking to connect with demons, essentially. So I remember asking if you wanted to come along and let's pray over it. Let's try and cast some demons out.
There was a few of us, I think.
There was a few of us.
I think you rang, or maybe we happened to call in at your place or something, and this would have been about 91, 92, somewhere around there. And you said, we're going to go down to such and such's shop, because she had a shop where she'd sell sort of bits and pieces. Yeah. And she'd also do her... and by the way, I just got to say that if you do hear through the microphone puffing and huffing, it's not the power of Christ compelling anybody. We've still got these dogs here which we're trying to settle. But you said, let's go down and pray. And I was like, okay. And so off we went. Anyway, sorry, Alec.
No. And I think, while we were there, and I remember this was in a fairly busy mall, and there was quite a few people walking past, and here we all were, essentially casting our own incantations in front of this shop, thinking that we were casting out demon and we were saving the world, and we were, arresting the demons, essentially. But I also remember there was a bong shop next door, like a shop where you could go and buy drug paraphernalia and T-shirts and all that sort of stuff.
Like Off Your Tree or one of those
it was like that. I can't remember the name of this one, but I remember we stood out there and went, oh, well, surely that's connected to demons, making people smoke drugs.
We would have probably thought it's no accident that these share a wall.
Yes, absolutely. Well, when demons set up shops,
that's right.
They might as well set up next door. There's efficiency in scaling.
Yeah, that's right.
So, yeah. So look, I think for me it was a short-lived foray into that, because I think that for me I always thought it was a bit of a crock, and it was also a little bit of a cop out.
I'm going to call you on that.
Really?
Because I can remember when we were there, we were, praying against it, and we were praying in tongues and stuff, and I think when people would walk past, we'd sort of go a little bit quiet and everything, right? Yeah. But I remember I came up to you, and you were standing there, and you had your hands on your face and your eyes closed, and you were looking really troubled, and I came up to you and I said, are you okay, B? And you're like, oh, no, I'm not. There's just a real spirit of whatever you said. I don't know, succubus or something, but you said there's a real spirit of, and you were pretty serious about it.
Oh, I wasn't that time. I was saying it was a short foray into it. Yeah. But I think I remember that, and possibly what. And was you weren't
okay.
No, it was probably because embarrassed.
You were being, no, you weren't embarrassed. You were being assaulted by a demon at that moment. That's the way I interpreted it.
Yeah, look, I possibly was being assaulted by a demon.
I don't mean to make you feel bad. This is what happened.
Oh no, I don't feel bad. I actually feel like going and praying in front of a shop. But you've led me back there. No, but so for me, like I did see it, and I was exposed to it a lot, but I thought it was a bit of rubbish, and maybe some of it was the fact that everything that was wrong with people was blamed on demons. Like, rather than you going, you know what, I might have to take some responsibility, or there might be a past or a history in my life that's caused the issues to date. It's not some external force that if we we speak an incantation, it's gone. And we don't have to worry about it anymore. Because I think you see that a lot in certainly in churches I was involved with, where people would go, oh, it's okay, we're covered by the blood of Christ. All is well, we'll just get on with getting on. And people don't deal with their issues. And many churches, they are full of quite strange people. And some of it is because I think they're there looking for help, they've got issues in their life, and there's an acceptance there. But they don't often get to the root cause of their issues because everything's externalised and it's something else that's influencing them. But
I was speaking to a friend just probably a couple of years ago who's still in a fundamentalist Pentecostal church.
Yeah.
And this person was telling me about how someone that they knew had found her own grandfather dead, right? Like basically got nothing suspicious or anything, just went to the house and grandpa had passed away.
Yeah.
And this had traumatized this girl. She was only in her 20s. And so she went to see some friends who were pastors who were going to pray for her. And she's traumatized by the fact that she's come across the dead body of her grandfather.
Yeah.
And they start saying, oh, back in your past is this history of your ancestors sacrificing infants. And he's telling me this story about this girl and about how it was just so amazing that God had, revealed this to them and they prayed him and all this, prayed for her. And I just sat there thinking, this is so sad. This girl is actually traumatized. You don't need a demon.
No.
She found her dead grandfather in the house. Yeah. She was traumatized. She went to the pastors, and instead of counselling or talking to her or even steering her towards professional counselling or grief counselling or trauma counselling, whatever, they start going on about demons of child sacrifice in ancient times that have been handed on to her. What the hell?
That is bizarre. That is absolutely bizarre.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's frightening. And, it's not as if the church isn't full of self-proclaimed counsellors. I mean, every corner I turned, certainly there was someone who was offering counsel to someone and a bit of expertise. So it's, but yeah, when people do hook onto that, the demons, it's a frightening place. So how about you?
So in the Revival Centre, there was a big no-no around demons because they'd had a big split with what is now called the CRC Church, right? It used to be called the Christian Revival Crusade. And they'd had a big split around demons.
Okay.
And it had, caused a big kerfuffle back in the 50s.
Okay.
So the Revival Centre was one of those split groups, and they'd gone, there are no demons, or at least, nothing that we really need to worry about, and, we're all free in Christ and all that kind of talk. So when I left the Revival Centre, which is a whole podcast in itself one day, by the way, but when I left the Revival Centre, I didn't right away, but later I sort of attached myself to a group of families that had left the Revival Centre and joined Great Big AOG.
As you do.
Yep. And they had come into the AOG and started to hear about demons and all that kind of thing. And so they were right into demons. And, I'd been clubbing and, doing some things which, by societal standards were fine. But by church standards, I was, letting demons in my life, right? So so the de facto leader of this little group said that he wanted to pray over me and, get all the demons out of my life. And I was like, okay. So I went around to his house one night, and I'd had a couple of, scary experiences in my life, just making some bad choices and stuff, and I was feeling pretty bad about myself. So I went around there and said to him, okay, let's pray. And he was looking for every opportunity he could to cast demons out of people. It was like a parlor trick to him. It was like a sort of, an alpha male one-up, I'm going to fight the devil, I'm going to show that I'm, amazing kind of thing. And really it was. That's exactly where he was at. But he prayed for me, and I sort of stood there, and he started praying for me and, praying in tongues and all this, and then, started to sort of push me over a little bit. So I went with it, slain in the spirit, fell down, and then he started praying just that sort of generic, in the name of Jesus, I bind all the demons, in T and blah, 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 and I take authority in the name of Jesus and all that kind of talk. And it was, it was what it was, but there was in me, there was like a choice, like where it was like, I have to let this happen. Part of me wanted to get up. and just go...
Did you think it was genuine, what was happening, or were you...
At the time I did.
Yeah.
At the time I wanted to believe it was, because it comes back to what you were saying before. I didn't have to necessarily take responsibility for everything and all the issues that I was dealing with. Instead, I could just have someone pray over me and everything's gone. It's like a magic prayer bullet, that's just going to get everything out. So anyway, what I did was I sort of lay there and went with it, and the guy was, calling this demon and that demon, and I sort of felt like in part of the giving over was to sort of start to shake and tremble and all this kind of stuff. And it was I got to say, in retrospect, it was a choice.
Yeah.
So eventually, though, he said to me, "Now, T, I'm going to pray that God would reveal to you the names of these demons that need to come out of you," right? So he said, "And any sins that you have committed, you have to confess them so that we can get these demons out."
Yeah.
So it became a kind of a confession. But what was interesting was I didn't want to tell them everything that I had done, and everything that I'd been up to, especially through their sort of judgmental eyes. But it was like, this is what you have to do to be free of the demons. Yeah. And so I lay there and I started saying stuff, drinking, smoking, and all this kind of stuff. And then there had been some things that had happened to me in my life, and I'm not going to go into huge details because as much as we're being anonymous, I also don't want to necessarily make the podcast about this, but there have been things that happened in my life, especially when I was young, that had traumatized me.
Yep.
And so I confessed those things. Confession's the wrong word because it wasn't things that I did, it was things that was done to me.
Yeah.
And put two and two together, but there you go. And I confessed those things.
Yeah.
And then they continued to pray and all this, and it went on for ages and ages and ages. It went on for hours, to be honest.
God.
And then it was all over. And it was like, yes, it's all done, it's all finished and all this kind of thing. And I got up, and what I didn't realise is I'd actually just given over all the intimate details of my life to these people in their living room.
Yeah.
And what happened was, years later, when I was marrying somebody in the church, my future father-in-law was friends with this guy.
Okay.
And he actually, because I didn't go into details about what had happened with me, I just said the name of this sin, or, the name of this thing.
Yeah.
And he actually came like 5-6 years later when we were preparing to get married, and came to my father-in-law and said, "You need to be careful of T, because once I was doing deliverance and he confessed to this."
Really?
Yeah.
That is frightening.
And my fiancé came to me really upset and said, "Do you have a problem with this?" And I was like, "What? What are you talking about?" "Oh, such and such, Pastor such and such said," because this guy by this stage had become a pastor.
No,
but he wasn't then. Yeah. Pastor such and such said that when he was praying for you, you confessed such and such. And so I had to sit down with my then fiancé and have a big conversation about my childhood trauma.
Oh, God.
Because the spin was that somehow I was going to be this, terrible, horrible person, or was this terrible, horrible person. And of course it was all good. But what troubles me still to this day, and even telling you this story now, is this demon thing, this confession thing, this deliverance, as they called it, while saying that they were setting me free, was actually bringing me under a further amount of control.
Absolutely.
In this great big AOG.
That sounds horrendous.
Totally, yeah. And even telling you the story now, like this, I didn't want to tell you before we started because I wanted to share with you this is what happened. That, there was no backstory. There was no explanation. It was just the name of a demon.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, 6 years later, this guy's actually interfering in my future plans to marry.
Yeah, it is that control, which we saw over and over. And that's just another aspect of it. I mean, my theory is that if there were demons there, after 3 hours, they left out of boredom. There's you don't have to cast them out.
Yeah.
Jeez. Yeah. I can't sit through a 3 hour movie, let alone that.
Yeah.
no, that is horrendous. Yes, it's.
What about you? What else? I know that was heavy, yeah.
That was heavy.
That was heavy, and you can put two and two together about what was going on.
Yeah, of course.
But it was, it was full on. Anyway, go on.
And this is done under the cover of grace and
That's
forgiveness,
right. Yeah,
of
that's
course,
right.
which
That's right.
is possibly one of the greatest abuses. It's that here they are caring for you, but all of a sudden they're turning against you.
Yeah, and 5 and 6 years later.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
It's no, I mean, look, I think there's been plenty of the little bits and pieces. I mean, certainly some of my siblings have also been in this space, and I can remember many nights when they would hold these prayer vigils to cast out demons out of other people. And again, I didn't get involved with it. I just don't know what it was. It was something that I did. I gave it a crack at the old witch's shop when we were there, but it wasn't something that ever really hooked me in. I found it slightly embarrassing. I think it was to.
I think deep down, underneath it all, when we talk about the end times, we've talked about some of the stuff that happened with around sexuality, and now we're talking about this. You didn't believe any of it.
Yeah, I'm starting to wonder whether I was
what were you doing there, B? Why were you even there?
I'm not sure. I mean, every now and then there was good food. I don't remember that.
If you like chips and Coke.
Yeah, chips and Coke. And I mean, look, there was some sharp dresses there too, You could get some good dress tips. But, I am starting to wonder that myself. I'm reflecting as we go along.
Because again, man, I don't know whether I was just vulnerable because I just come out of a cult and I probably, right? But I just bought into it all. And I was always of the belief or the feeling that you needed to put your brain, your objections, your sort of cognitive objections, whatever you want to call it, mental objections, you had to put them aside.
Yes.
Because it was like that was the barrier between you and God. And I had the same thoughts as you did, but I was like, oh no, I've got to put that down because otherwise I'm not going to get blessed, or I'm not going to get set free, or I'm not going to get to the next stage of what God's got for me.
Yeah, I mean, it's not as if I didn't believe a lot of these things and deeply believe a lot of these things, but I think there was a depth of scepticism which I held on to, but I probably tried to push that scepticism away as well. I mean, that was one thing that was probably seen as a hindrance to my faith or whatever. If I didn't get rid of that scepticism or push it to the side. And
well, that's exactly what I'm saying, yeah, but I think I did a lot easier.
Yeah, and whereas I probably did resist, and I probably skated around the edge for a while, and and except for maybe 3-4 years when I sort of dived in neck deep, really, or probably well over my head into more leadership sort of stuff, where I think it was at that point that I had to believe some of the stuff, that I had to convince myself that I had to embrace some of it. Otherwise, you couldn't be in that space as a leader. And everyone wants that recognition as a leader. It's that sort of stuff that...
The demons thing, though, even within Great Big AOG, officially within Great Big AOG, it wasn't a thing.
No.
It was on the fringes, but they tolerated it. Like they used to let that old guy have his meetings, and people would have prayer, deliverance sessions, at prayer meetings and that kind of stuff. But officially, it wasn't peddled, it wasn't preached.
No, it's true. And I mean, as much as they let it happen, but it was part of them. It was part of them. Like if they were letting them use that building. The old guy who was doing it, if he was using that building for that purpose, they were complicit in that. Yeah. So there's no doubt. I do remember another occasion actually where someone very close to me actually was experiencing some just shitty times in life, and you could see that they had issues. There's absolutely no doubt about it. But there was a bunch of people who decided that they were going to get that person around under the guise of some support, and they got them around and said, we just want to pray with you, we want to be with you and beside you and make sure that you know that you're supported. Well, within about 2 minutes, and I was part of this, I thought, I support this person. They started to try and cast demons out of him. and this person didn't react well. It got quite angry about it, and they said, see, there's demons,
right. Yeah.
and tried to hook it onto it.
Because you have to go with it. You can't resist it, or that is the devil.
Yeah, 100%. And one of the other people there, a female, struck this person in the face and scratched them from...
So now who's got the demon?
Yeah, from head down to their neck. There were deep scratches, and they said that they had to do it, and they were led to do it by God to try and get that demon out. So, and wow. It was, and this person found it very difficult to be in the presence of the person who had struck them that night for a very, very long time.
Yeah.
And they, again, it was just used to see they've got a spirit of unforgiveness, it was called. It was a demon driving their behaviour. Rather than going, you know what, I did a shitty thing and I hit this person across the face.
And scratched them,
Yeah.
Yeah, isn't that funny that the actual aggressor becomes the victim, and the victim becomes the aggressor. You've got the spirit of unforgiveness, rather than I hear. I remember there was a prayer meeting I went to once, and this one's actually a bit funny. And we started praying, and it was. Do you remember that whole Toronto blessing thing where the laughter came? Right, this is before that.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
So this is before that. So what happened was we're all praying for each other at this prayer meeting, and we get to this one person, and this one person, she was a little bit odd. And they started praying for her, and then she just started laughing. And this is before Toronto blessing, right? And before the laughing thing. And so we're all like, oh, what's going on here? She's laughing at God. And one of the guys who was there looks at everyone and goes, mocking spirit. And then we're all like, dun, dun, dun. And we're, and I got my NIV study Bible out, and I'm turning it, God will not be mocked, whatever a man sows, that, because it's scripture keys, right? You throw the sword of the spirit at the thing, right? So we're all praying, and this girl, she'd fallen down by that stage, slain in the spirit, and she was laughing, and she was just wetting herself. And we're all, mocking spirit and all this kind of stuff. And I can remember when they said to her, one of the guys goes to her, mocking spirit, come out of her, and then the other guy goes, one of the other guys who was praying, because these two guys took over.
Yeah.
And one goes, what's your name? Spirit, what's your name? And the girl looks, and I could just see her face, and she just stopped. She goes, I don't know, Satan, like this. And then they go, oh, lying spirit, right? Because it can't be the devil. The devil's not going to be at our prayer meeting in this suburb. It's a lying spirit. So she had a mocking spirit and a lying spirit and all this kind of stuff. And it was all, cast out and all this kind of thing, and it was all over. And then later, we weren't hauled in, but we were all called in to have a meeting with the pastor, Pastor B, at Great Big AOG, who said, explain to us, while we believe that you can get rid of demons from non-Christians, we don't believe that Christians can have demons. And I guess that was sort of the line, and that they don't believe this. But again, like you said, it still happens and still goes on. But yeah, we were sort of instructed that this was, and I can remember some of us were still like, nah, they're just being hard-hearted. That was real. Yeah. And she had this mocking spirit and all this kind of stuff. But it was just so funny when they said, what's your name? And I could just see her. She just stopped, like the whole thing sort of stopped, and she rolled her eyes a little bit and went, I don't know, Satan. Like this. And I was like, yeah, that's a good name for a demon, isn't it? Yeah.
Well,
so, true story.
I mean, that was one of the probably the things for me that never sat comfortably with all these Christians having demons. Well, if God is so real, and if God is inhabiting this vessel, this person, then how can a demon also live in there? It just didn't make sense to me. So I remember asking that question several times to people of authority in leadership, and
but wouldn't the argument be that it was on the sort of the outside, and it was influencing them, and that was all that Kenneth Hagin stuff.
Yeah.
And that was the other thing I guess I should have said, that before my deliverance experience, they had given me books.
Yeah. Okay.
And so I wasn't fresh to this, again, there's more of that priming, that these little monkey-like things are attached to you and in your ear and all that kind of thing.
Yeah. you know, it makes
So that's what they used to say. You're not possessed, you're oppressed.
I do. I actually do remember that being bounced around.
Yeah.
It still smells of a crock of shit.
Yeah.
To me, but but that's okay. That's Mr. Cynical. That's me.
Yeah. And rightly so. You know, rightly so.
Yeah. Well, you know, I carry that through my life, and it doesn't always do me favours, but it obviously did at that time.
Yeah. Cool.
We are coming to the end of this one. You have been doing a swathe of online work, unlike me, who I have been definitely riding on your coattails. So did you want to speak to a couple of things?
Yeah, I guess I just wanted to say that, you know, this podcast is available on all good podcast platforms, so please feel free to download. We are hosted on Podbean, so you can get it there. But what I've done is I've set up a couple of Facebook pages. So there is a Facebook page that you can find, I Was a Teenage Fundamentalist, and there's also a Facebook group. So we want to invite you to join the Facebook group, comment, say what you want to say, talk to each other, talk to us. You know, we'll do our best to respond. But we just want to sort of build a little bit of community around this as well.
Yeah, and look, don't be afraid to be critical of anything we've said, supportive of it, question it, whatever. Just engage. I guess it's all part of the conversation, and no judgment here. We've been, I think, on both sides of the coin. So happy to just for the conversation to flow.
Sounds good. All right. Anyway, I'll see you next week.
See you then.